Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to class 2 of the 4-class sequence. Today's class is going to focus on your thoughts and feelings and concerns about doing facilitation. We'll be having an introduction, and then we'll be having a little bit of a discussion about if you have questions from last class. We'll be having an empathy circle on the topic of what are your thoughts, concerns, and feelings about facilitating. And then we'll have a debrief about that. So that's kind of the overall structure for today's class. And just to reiterate kind of the purpose of the training, you know, we have 3 goals for the training. We want you to understand and become familiar with the goals and values and the core principles of the empathy circle, and have you feel comfortable with guiding others through that experience. Second, and just as important, we want the participants to be confident and comfortable with beginning to facilitate and feel ready to deal with challenges that might arise in an empathy circle, and there are ones that do arise periodically. And finally, we hope that you leave the training having established some bonds with other facilitators, so that you can continue to support each other with your training and learning ongoing, because this training is just the beginning of opening the door. It's a short training, and we'll practice listening and facilitating, but that's a lifelong practice, learning to do that. So I want you to realize that this is the beginning, not the end of anything. Okay, so let's just do a quick check-in, maybe how you're feeling, your name and how you're feeling. So I'll go first. I'm Lou, and I'm excited and curious. Jenny?
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm from UK, and I'm feeling a little bit trepidation, I think the word is.
Thank you. Karen?
Hi, I'm Karine from Paris, France, and I'm happy to be there. I'm a little bit tired because I just had the Vision 101 session before.
Thank you. Zach?
Yeah, I'm Zach from Northern California, and I feel nice and caffeinated.
Joshua?
Hi, I'm Josh from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm just grateful to be here with other empathizers. It's really fun and glad to experience it again.
Thanks. Katrina?
Hi, I'm in Bristol, the UK. I'm surprised actually that I'm not more shattered, because I woke up at 3 o'clock this morning and didn't go back to sleep. But the nice thing was I saw the morning star. So I'm looking forward to the session this evening.
Thank you. Natalia?
Hi, I'm Natalia from India. I feel a little bit slow and tired. It's the end of the day, 10:30 p.m. And I'm feeling very curious towards the discussion today.
Thank you. Sarah?
I'm feeling really grateful, also caffeinated. Thanks. And from the San Francisco Bay Area in California.
Thanks. MJ?
Yeah, I'm MJ. He's pronouncing him his, calling from Amsterdam. And I'm excited and grateful to be here.
Great. Anish?
Hi, I'm Anish, calling in from India, and I'm fresh and energized.
Great. And Bill?
Hi, I'm Bill from Northern California, I feel excited and a little bit nervous because I'm doing tech today, and I'm a little bit nervous about it.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to double dip here. I just have to share that every time I get on one of these calls and I'm connecting with people from around the world to talk about this kind of stuff, it's a miracle. It's a science fiction miracle that we are able to do this. And there's something, it just moves me so deeply that I'm able to connect with people from all over to do this. So grateful that you're all here and that we're doing this together. So, and I'm going to turn it over to Bill now.
Okay. Well, we thought we'd start off today by just having some questions, reviewing some questions or concerns or whatever, or learning outcomes or whatever that you had from last week and then may have, considered it this week. So for the sake of time, I'll just kind of call on people. If you don't have anything, again, it's okay. Don't feel that you have to produce something if you just don't have anything, but it's a good way to kind of get the conversation started. So I'll start with Jenny. You weren't here last week. Okay. So
yeah.
But
so
yeah.
So I'm kind of a bit scared that I've missed the boat and I'm going to be running to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
And also that you've already formed this great sort of bond together that I'm not part of.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd be very interested to see what everybody's got to say, because I think it'll help me get a flavour of what you did do the other night when I wasn't there.
I think so, and you've been to several circles, so I don't think the learning curve will be too steep. Good to have you here, Katrina.
I spent the whole the few days that we've had since the last session thinking about listening and thinking about the process of listening and finding I was getting more and more insights the more I thought about it. So that was the benefit from last session for me.
Great. Josh.
Yeah, so just excitement about this, the potential of this, and that it's something that Edwin said he'd love everybody in the world to learn this, and already thinking, how can I bring this to my place of work and my friendships and families? So.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we hope to support you in that. Zach.
That was good to just kind of reconnect with the process. Haven't done a cafe in a few months, and so ready to get going. I like the idea of the agenda for today. So.
Okay, great, thanks. Karen.
Yes, it was about the deep listening, and this is the foundation if you want to have some better connection each other's, and that's important to listen to each other first. That was the point we have to start. Yes.
Thank you, Karen. MJ.
Yeah, I'm grateful to learn skills towards making better dialogue with people and sharing.
Okay, great. Sarah.
I think I went already.
Oh, did you? You flipped around there. Oh, okay. Oh, and there's Anne. Sorry. Okay. Anne, you were here, I believe you were here last week, or I saw you on Friday. Okay. And so we were just going over any concerns or questions. This is a class on facilitation. And so we're just going around and questions or concerns or learnings from facilitation. And if you're kind of put on the spot, you can pass.
No, I haven't got any at the moment, thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay. And I'd go, Natalia, did we? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any questions or concerns at that point, thank you.
Okay, great. Anish.
No questions at this moment.
Okay, and Lou?
Do I have any questions at this moment? I don't.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. And for myself, I just have questions is that we have a little bit extra time. And so in the design of this class, we can fill this class out a little bit. So in your feedback, maybe, now or at the end of the class, maybe you could tell us, well, the second class, it would be helpful to maybe delve into this more or that more. So anyway, I'm looking forward to your feedback on that. And I'll turn it back over to Lou, and Lou will take us into the circle.
Yeah, so the next thing we're going to do is do some empathy circle time on the question of what are your thoughts, concerns, and questions about facilitating empathy circles. Before we do that, I'm going to give an explanation of empathy circle practice, because everybody does it a little differently, and Bill did it last time, so I'm going to do it this time. And then next class, you all are going to practice doing it. And I made the mistake in the last class of saying that you were going to do that in this class, and Bill pointed out to me afterwards in our debrief that I had jumped ahead a class, so you're not going to do that this week, but you will be doing it next week, because it is an important step in holding an empathy circle, is to describe to people, what it's about, what's going to happen, and to answer their questions about that. So here's how I usually describe it. So we're going to be taking turns speaking and having someone reflect back what we're saying. So that's what happens in an empathy circle. Usually there are 4 people, 5 people, that's an ideal size. And each person in the circle takes a turn speaking, and before they start speaking, they select someone else in the circle to reflect back what they're saying. Everybody in the circle is listening to the speaker, but one person is selected to reflect back what the person is saying. And usually there's a time limit, so 3 minutes or 5 minutes is a typical time limit. And when the speaker is speaking, we ask that you pause periodically, like maybe after you express an idea or two, so that the reflector has an opportunity to reflect back what's being said. Because if you just talk for like 5 minutes, it's very hard as a listener to hold on to all of that. And if you don't pause, because that's an unusual thing to do, people don't pause usually when they're speaking, the facilitator will ask you to pause or remind you to pause, or the listener could hold up a hand or something like that to remind you to pause. And so when you're the speaker, you speak on the topic of the circle, if there is a topic. Sometimes the topic is no topic, whatever you want to talk about. But even if there is a topic of the circle, when it's your turn to speak, you can speak about whatever you want, whatever's on your mind, or whatever you feel strongly about. And we really encourage you to do that, because that's what keeps the circle alive, is to really talk about what's important to you in the moment. The reflector's job is to reflect back just what they're hearing the speaker say. So whatever you understand they're trying to get across, that's what you want to reflect back. And that is also a little bit unusual. So this is, an empathy circle is different than regular conversation, in that in a regular conversation, you might respond, if you're a listener, you might respond with comments or agreeing or disagreeing, or your thoughts about what they're saying, or your own experience related to what the person's saying. And in an empathy circle, you're just reflecting back what you understand the person is trying to get across, and how they feel about it. And something else the facilitator will do is, if you forget to do that, if you kind of lapse into commenting or agreeing or disagreeing or something other than reflecting back, the facilitator will remind you, what we're doing here is, your job is just to reflect back what you're hearing right now. When you get to the end of your time, and you don't have to take all the time that you have, but when you get to the end of the time, you'll get a time signal or a handle, or you'll hear something. Just wrap up what you're saying. You don't have to stop instantly, but wrap up what you're saying. And then if you feel heard, tell the person, thank you, I feel heard. And then the listener becomes the speaker. and they select someone else in the circle to be their reflector. And then the listening and the reflecting like that go around the circle until everyone's had a chance to be the speaker and a listener. And if there's more time, which usually there is, you go a second round. People go around doing that. And usually the amount of time set up is so that you can do at least 3 or 4, you get at least 3 or 4 turns speaking. That's ideal. So that's the basics of an empathy circle. That's how it works. And anyone have any questions about it? So that's how I would typically do an introduction. And does anyone have any questions about it before we go into the circle, our actual circle time? Yeah, Josh.
I was wondering if they've ever been done with just like one-on-one, like empathy circles.
Sure. You can, I mean, that's more like what I would call an empathy buddy thing, where you get together with someone and agree to do exchanges, and that could be not timed, or you could take timed turns. But yes, you can do it just with 2 people. Absolutely. You could do it with any number, really. But yeah, 2 people can work. Is there another question? Yeah, Katrina?
Is it always 2 hours? Because I've been inviting people to join, and somebody said, "Oh, I don't think I've got the energy for that." And I was thinking maybe 2 hours is quite a long time for most people. Can it be shorter?
It can. My experience is that the benefits, really feeling the benefits of the empathic listening, happens around the 3rd or 4th turn that people take. And so if you get together with people and you welcome them and you do an introduction and then you get into circle, you know, and you're taking 3-minute turns or 5-minute turns, and you've got 4 people and a facilitator, so 5 people. So that means 1 round. If you're taking 5-minute turns and you do 1 round, that's 25 minutes. So 3 rounds is an hour and a half. So that's why we do 2 hours, because it really lets you have a chance to experience the process. If you take shorter turns and you have smaller number of people, then you can do it in less amount of time. But because the process is different than normal conversation, pretty much everyone experiences discomfort with it when they start. And if you do it too short a time, then they get to experience the discomfort and they don't get to experience the benefit. And they come away with a bad feeling like, this is kind of weird, you know? Yeah, so I always want to try to do it long enough that people actually get to experience the benefit. And if I get people who are interested but can't commit the time, then I try to do smaller circles. So if we're only getting together for an hour or an hour and a half, the smaller circles allow more turns with less amount of time, and try to do stuff to front load their understanding, like sending them a handout or having them watch a video so that the prep time is shorter when you're actually together. So those are some of the strategies I use for time limiting.
Thanks.
Okay.
I see Natalia's hand is raised.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, Natalia.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the process. So what if during the circle, for somebody who is silent listener, something arises that is very burning in them, and they really need to be heard at that moment? What happens in this situation?
Well, if they speak up, in other words, it's not their turn to speak, but they start speaking, then as a facilitator, I would interrupt them. And I would say to them, you know, when it's your turn to speak, you can say whatever you want, and maybe make a note about what it is you would like to say so you could remember when it's your turn. And, you know, the circle will come around to you. And if they are so charged that they won't listen to that, then I might give them a little bit of reflective listening. But then if they're not willing to stop, then I would engage them in a conversation about whether they're willing to do the process that we're doing. because the process has a structure. So yeah, those are some of the things that I would do. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I also saw Anish's hand.
Yeah, Anish?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, and Lou, this is just my impression, so please correct me if I'm away from the process. So I understand that when we get into a dialogue space like this, it's always good to remind the purpose, why we are doing this, why is it a structured form of dialogue? So that's one. Second, it's always also good to just remind the values. So what are the values of the circle that you're holding right now? And when we talk about mutuality and values kind of becomes the guiding line to the process. So when a person in that moment is so triggered, after we have acknowledged and empathized, I think, and if the person really wants to contest and challenge the process, then I think one of the ways to check is if they still agree with the process. If they don't, then probably there's another way out. However, I see a connection between the process and the values. It kind of seem to be connected in a deeper form.
Yeah, that's I agree with you completely, and that one of the ways to influence people is to talk about the values that you're trying to hold by doing the thing that you do. And so, like mutuality, allowing the speaker to speak and be heard, just like when it's your turn, we want you to speak and be heard. Right, that helps people understand and align. Doesn't always happen, but yes, that's the very good way to do that. Okay, so people may have other questions too, and more will probably come up in the Empathy Circle process. And we're going to have a time for discussion at the end too. That's the purpose of that. So let's, unless someone else has something burning, let's go into the Empathy Circles. Bill?
Yeah, I just want to say we want to come back like we did last week at about 11:50. Give us 40 minutes or 30 minutes or 12.
Yes.
11:50. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right.
All right.
All right. Here we go.
Bill's going to push his magic button.
Yeah, I know. This is my first time. Be gentle, people. Be gentle. Okay. Oh, MJ, what?
Yeah, I just wonder how many minutes that is because we're in different time zones.
Oh, right. How many minutes? It's going to be about an hour and a half, roughly speaking, maybe a little bit less, an hour and 20 minutes or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll take 5-minute turns.
Right, 5-minute turns. Okay, here we go. All right, and okay, you should be able to join. All right, we should get a few more people here. 6 participants. All right, and then the chat. Great. Okay, we're all here. Okay. All right, so just, oops, sorry, just check in, we're recording. Oh yeah, we are still recording here, okay. So, and that's okay with everybody? Okay, thank you. And then the topic again is, what are your feelings, questions, and concerns about being an Empathy Circle Facilitator? Anything beyond that, or of course, anything that is a burning issue for you right now. Again, I will have the phone of timing. And then it's a soft close, and then I have my handcrafted sign here that kind of gives you another reminder. So with that said, I invite someone not named Bill to start speaking, who would like to start speaking. Pick a listener, and away we go. Okay. All right.
I'd be happy to kick us off as speaker, Bill.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Are you speaking to me?
Oh, I can speak to you.
Are you speaking? Yeah, anyone. Who do you want to speak to?
This Joshua.
Joshua. Okay, great.
Yeah, listening.
Cool. So a few months ago, I had an interesting experience hosting an Empathy Cafe. And one of the challenges that came up was a story that one of my neighbors was trying to share with me. And I'm going to kind of retell it appropriately as I can. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, so a couple of months ago, I think you said that you hosted an Empathy Cafe and you had a really interesting story with some conflict that came up with your neighbor, and you're going to tell the story.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm bringing it up is because when they came to the cafe, they were, and understandably so, really agitated, upset. Their voice was raised, you know, and I think I didn't feel, you know, entirely uncomfortable, but I could also see the situation that, you know, others in the circle might have been feeling uncomfortable at the time.
Yeah, so when they came to the circle, you noticed that there was agitation, they had a raised voice, and while you weren't necessarily feeling uncomfortable, you could feel that people in the circle might not have been ready for that.
Yeah, and without sharing, like, you know, the details of the story, like, you know, I think it's fair and important to name that, you know, they're a Black neighbor, and they expressed that they, you know, didn't feel safe in the neighborhood, and that they had to really like cloister themselves a lot, stay inside most days, because they felt like if they went outside, their neighbors would retaliate and call the police on them.
Yeah, so it's relevant to this story and the conflict that the neighbor was Black and that they didn't feel safe even leaving their house, so they stayed inside a lot because when they did go outside, they feared like retaliation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, all that said, you know, even though they were understandably really upset, the situation was intense enough where, you know, I and others had to kind of have some concern about, like, you know, like their mental stability, you know, and their ability to potentially stay safely with us in the space. I guess that might contradict a bit of what I just said before, saying that I didn't feel threatened, but just the potential of it, like, was evident with how intense it was, you know, the encounter.
Yeah, so you're noticing when they got there or when they started voicing their concerns that there was a concern for safety among you and others, and wondering if this was something that could be done safely moving forward with them.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And so my solution at the time was I did reflect them, and they, you know, rightfully like corrected me in some of my reflections, but I made the decision at a certain point to stop reflecting them and to just, like, you know, I said, okay, I'm just going to level with you and respond, you know, using, like, you know, active listening. And I then took the steps of, you know, affirming her and saying, listen, you know, I see you and I want to help you, you know, as a neighbor, and I want to raise this issue with the board so that you feel protected, you know, by our housing cooperative, basically, that we live in together.
So you started reflecting as like the empathy session, and then you kind of decided to break that role in a sense so that you could let the person know that you did want to help and work with them in a cooperative way so that you could address the housing association together.
Yeah, and doing that succeeded in that, you know, she calmed down and things seemed fine. And after about like 10 minutes later, we concluded the circle. And it was running up to the end of our time anyway.
So after that part that you added in, that you were going to help them, that it did help kind of lessen the tension, and they were able to continue with the circle, but it only lasted about 10 minutes because the time was up.
Yeah, thank you. I guess the last thing I'd say is you know, I'm just curious, you know, in becoming a better and stronger facilitator, you know, being, you know, increasingly aware and comfortable with, you know, how to keep everyone calm, you know. And also I didn't mention that this person like came to the cafe like really late. So they didn't get the instruction initially, and they weren't fully oriented, you know, with the situation. But they felt called to come anyway because they saw it as just an opportunity to potentially get their problems resolved, you know, and for someone to actually listen to them.
Yeah, so one thing, to finish it up, and one thing that you didn't mention is that they came late, but they were still interested in coming. They wanted to be there, and they did not hear the introduction about how the circle necessarily works. And I think that's basically what you said, right? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Joshua. Yeah, I feel hurt.
Megan, is that, I can't really see your name, or Charlotte, your name's Charlotte, isn't it? Yeah. I guess your name is, oh, there it is.
Hi.
Would you like to listen?
That's great.
Okay. I guess, Zach, that idea kind of triggered something within me. I'm hearing a little echo on your end, Charlotte.
Oh, sorry, that's probably me.
Oh, that's maybe it might be Charlotte's too.
Tell
yeah,
me if you still hear it.
Yeah, I can still hear the echo. I think maybe if you just mute it. No worries.
Is that good now?
Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds good.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was reminding me of a difference between, you know, giving these empathy circles with people that you know in your community versus kind of going out and hosting them with maybe strangers, and trying to piece out when an empathy circle would be appropriate versus when a restorative circle might be different. And you can repeat back.
Yeah, that's right. So hearing from Zach, you're now contemplating, when is it empathy circles the right thing, and when is it a restorative circle is the right thing?
Yes, and what I'm thinking is that, you know, if you know that there is a conflict that is currently happening in a community or your community, that a restorative circle might be better because you can meet with the parties that have conflict and you can kind of empathize with them first, and you can create some sort of shared understanding prior to meeting in a circle.
Okay, and if there's a conflict in the community, and with a empathy circle, with a restorative circle, you can meet ahead of time, talking to both parties with empathy, meeting each party with empathy beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it also brings up a great point of, you know, seeing this empathy tent, and I'm definitely curious as to the conflicts that have occurred in empathy tents, but how you can have conversations with people with such polar opposite views. I mean, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, where, you know, racial tensions are high, and I could imagine having maybe some Black Lives Matter protesters with people who like vote for our governor, and I could see that getting really heated. And so I am interested in how these conflicts, if they've come up, and how facilitators have mediated that conflict, whether they've had to break their role as the empathizer facilitator to give empathy first, or whether there's a different way they've found.
Yeah, and now you're also realizing in an empathy tent, they're with the kinds of polarization that's going on right now, that there would be conflict that comes into that tent. And so you're wondering, as a facilitator, what has happened in the past that's worked well, and if the role needs to be broken in those types of circumstances.
Yeah, and in addition to that, you know, what materials are at the tent? Like, are there, you know, I've seen signs, is there like a board with directions and instructions so that people can read, and maybe even as a facilitator who has their own tent, like, you know, what's the financial cost of getting everything up, printed and displayed, and even the logistics of lugging everything around with you, all the way to the legalities of putting a tent in a park. I can't hear you, you're muted.
Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, now you're thinking about, okay, if I really did an empathy tent, what would be all the particular details that might be helpful, including if it's at a park, are there registration to the park, like basically what kind of helps has to set up an empathy tent could all the people that have had experience kind of be scaled to the individual now, like forms and in the tent and prices, like you're just really thinking about all the details.
Yeah, that's it. And I am interested in bringing this to the community, and yeah, also curious if the people with empathy tents, if they're invited to the community or if you just kind of show up, and you know how that has been received by different parties, and you know just getting a better experience of the history of empathy tents and what's working and what hasn't worked, just to learn from that.
And now you're really interested in the all the specific histories, what's worked and hasn't worked in bringing an empathy tent to communities. Are there sometimes that it's announced ahead of time? Is there sometimes when it's not announced ahead of time? And what's been the results?
Absolutely, and I feel heard. So, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Was there a bell? I didn't hear that
Yeah,
bell.
there was.
It's an internal bell.
No, it's an internal. Very good. No, yeah, I have a little piano riff. So.
Oh, I didn't hear it, but I knew.
No, no, you did know, and so don't worry about it. So what I do is I kind of let that go. People hear it or they don't, and then I kind of wait. This is just a transparency to when they kind of finish and get a final reflection, and then I come in with this tremendously handcrafted sign there.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Charlotte.
Okay, so MJ.
Listening.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm really appreciative of Joshua and Zach and articulating their thoughts. So I'm just going to sit with some of that for just a bit and just take it in.
Yeah. You're really appreciative to Joshua and Zach for their thoughts, and you'd like to take a moment to take it in and process it.
Yeah, I didn't realize how helpful all of like in my body as I'm hearing Joshua, I'm realizing all of that would be really helpful for me. I would love to see all of those details and hear all those details, and I wouldn't have thought to express wanting to know all of that, but I do want to know everything that Joshua just explained.
Yeah, you appreciate hearing all of the details Joshua was describing. And it wouldn't have come to you naturally, but you are thinking about it and you would like to know the questions he has.
And so then I'm trying to see if there's further questions. I have maybe knowing more of the benefits that people feel after just one empathy circle. It seems like there's a lot of information being taken in currently from the feedback forums, but I don't know how long the feedback forums go back, but just any details from the feedback forums would be helpful to let people know here are some of the benefits that people have expressed.
You're interested in learning more details on these empathy circles, how people feel after their first empathy circle, for example. And you think there's a lot of good information taken in from the feedback forms that you would be interested, despite not knowing how long they have been going for. You'd be interested in knowing how people benefit from them.
Yeah. Yeah, to explain the benefits rather than the structure. I know when I was talking to my friends, I was explaining some of the structure and explaining how at the third round, there's a depth of listening that comes in that doesn't come in previously, but yeah, like if the feedback form has a I think that's the major, yeah. I'm just now realizing all the different questions I would have for a feedback form, and I'm wondering what has already been asked and what other questions I would have further for feedback forms.
You talked about how you have tried explaining this to friends, and you talked about the structure. For example, how the third way around, you kind of breach into deeper conversations. But I think you said you'd like to maybe focus more on the benefits of the circle rather than the structure. And you're starting to see all the questions you have now that you would put on a feedback form.
And I'm curious, yeah, I was curious what time it was. So yay, I heard it this time. Thank you so much. I feel very fully heard.
Thank you, Charlotte. Natalia, would you like to listen?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. My current feelings towards facilitating an empathy circle is I wouldn't be the most confident doing it as of right now. I'll pause there.
I'm hearing you say that you would not be comfortable to do facilitating right now at the moment.
Yeah, it is something that would be pushing me out of my comfort zone. I'm aware it takes a certain emotional capacity to be able to facilitate. And a concern I would have is consistently having that capacity.
So it would really push you out of your comfort zone because you're aware that it takes certain emotional capacity to facilitate, and you're not very confident in having that right now.
I do think perhaps through this training and practicing that I will be able to harness that. It might just take practice. I'm excited to see how that turns out.
So you believe that with the practice, it might get resolved, and you're excited to see how it goes?
A question I have, I guess, would be, so I would ideally want to do this with local XR people in the Netherlands first. I would be the only facilitator. People here don't really know about it yet. So a question of mine would be if it's possible for one person to do it with, I guess how many people would be possible to do with one person?
So the question you're having right now is, if you do it in your local community with XR, how many people can you take on board being the only facilitator?
Yeah. But I guess my feelings are, well, I am a little nervous for it. I am kind of excited as well, because I would love to be able to share this practice.
So you notice there is excitement inside you to share this practice, and at the same time there is some nervousness.
Yeah. Thank you, Natalia. I feel fully heard.
Thank you for sharing. Bill, would you like to listen to me?
Will do.
Thank you. So I'm resonating a lot with what MJ said. Sorry, Charlotte, can you please mute? Yeah, I think it's better now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was saying that I'm resonating a lot with Michael sharing. My main concern at that moment is also about sustainability and commitment for the facilitator. And it's from another angle, and I will pause here.
So your concern is about sustainability and commitment from the facilitator, what it would take.
Yeah. So right now I have injured my back pretty badly and I can't sit. And that's why I'm lying down, and that's why most of the time I'm off screen. So I don't, yeah, it gives me some ease feeling physically. And I'm thinking that I'm really struggling to keep up with my commitments that I have at the moment. Like, it was real challenge for me to come to this call, and then I had to take a call to come here.
So you're feeling your back is hurting you, and so that's why your video is off, and it really brings up the idea of commitment, that you really had to, is it more than you can do at this particular point, or is there flexibility? How does it work?
Yeah, the word flexibility really speaks to me.
Okay, right. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to make a bad pun. Okay.
No, I really enjoyed the word flexibility. I wish I had my flexibility back.
Sure.
Yeah, so what my struggle is that, what if I'm physically unable or mentally unable, as MJ was raising, like, what if I'm not in a good place to facilitate this thing, but I already committed to do it? How can I make it work, I guess?
So you're concerned about if you're physically or otherwise, disabled for a period of time, how would you make it work? And, how does that happen?
Yeah, and while I'm hearing myself saying this, the word support really comes to me. So it would be great to have a sense of support and have a sense of a shoulder that will be there for me to pick up in this challenging situation.
So the word support really it kind of like it comes out to you, and that you really would feel a lot better if you knew that you had support throughout this thing, that would really help you go through this process.
Yeah. And I guess it also gives me ease to think about it, because right now there are like 13 people on this call, and this is a small community where I feel I could probably reach to get that support and to ask for help.
Mm-hmm. So you're feeling good about the people that you've met here, and you feel that they would be a ready supply of support if you asked for it.
Yeah, I guess at that point I'm complete and also a bit tired. I really want to put my screen off.
Okay, sure. So you feel like resting now and support. Okay, great. All right, hope you feel better. Okay, sure.
Yes, I feel heard.
Okay, good. Feel heard and better. Well, then we're going to check. All right, so I'm going to break the rule. There's a lot of, so that's the answer to Zach. Just a lot of issues came up. So I'm going to give myself 5 minutes. Sarah has not had a chance to talk, and I'll do this without reflection, breaking, because there's a lot of information here. And I feel that I can kind of go and answer these and address these things pretty quickly. That'll be fodder for the next round, and then we can move on. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, great. So one of the things that Natalia brought out, and in this, is that people feel that, oh, it's a memory test. Do I have to memorize this and stuff like that? And so one of the things you really have to kind of get out, and I think this is like a value of culture of empathy that really is not stated yet, but it's not a contest. It's not, if you need some support, the idea is to make connections. And if you need, oh, can you stop? Can I take notes? Can I do this? Or would you be co-facilitator with me in this circle? That's all fine. It's not like to achieve superhuman facilitation skills, but to really make people feel heard. And in Zach's example, what I really liked is that he was really listening. The Empathy Circle is a tool. It's a wonderful tool, and it can be used in a lot of things to get to, I forgot exactly whether it's MJ or Joshua, talking about whether a restorative circle and empathy circle is best. A restorative circle can include an empathy circle. And so, and a lot of times we say, well, if there's a real contentious issue, we will have a pre-circle and a post-circle or something like that. It's not exactly the same thing as a restorative circle. By the way, Lou and Edwin are much more experienced at that than I am. And I, use them as a wonderful resource. So when there's a joke that people say really quickly, is this guy goes to a Rogerian therapist, Carl Rogers therapist, and he says, doctor, I'm feeling bad. And the doctor says, I feel bad. And then he walks over to the window and says, I'm feeling so bad, I'm going to commit suicide. And the doctor says, oh, you feel so bad, you're going to commit suicide. He jumps out the window. The therapist looks out the window and says, splat. And kind of like a bad joke. But it is sort of like, sometimes the circle is a tool. And sometimes like whatever the tool is, a hammer or a screwdriver, is just not the right thing for that particular time. And so certainly feel free. Now, as you become more skilled as a facilitator, you'll find ways to keep people in more smoothly into the process. But the idea eventually is for people to feel heard, bottom line, not to be, slavish about, oh, this, that, and circle, and if you don't have the circle. So one of the reasons we do want to also talk about support is that we do want to, form bonds here. And that's one of the things we're trying to do so that you can have support. Hey, I'd like to have a co-facilitator, or I'd like to do this. And if you ask me, and I'd be happy to do it, people were saying like, well, what's the, do I have the right answers? Essentially, they want to know if I'm doing it right. And that's not the question. The question is, are you asking the right questions? Are people being heard? Are people, is that happening? How am I doing on time? About a little bit more than a minute. Okay. The ratio, usually 1 to 4, 1 to 5. This is a little bit of a larger circle. And then the benefits. Edwin has a whole bunch of videos going, I'm sure, 7 hours of people just saying what the benefits are, but you can find that there's a link to why circle? Why do they do the circle? And that's in our introductory videos. And you can find some things there. And having said that, we'd be willing, you know, in the feedback form, you can suggest other questions to have that would kind of make some more meaningful, you know, information for you. And then sustainability and commitment. You should feel, people generally feel better about this. So if your sustainability or commitment is compromised in some way, take care of yourself. You know, we say when people have need a bio break, take a bio break. If you need to eat, eat. This isn't about like, you know, torturing people or anything like that, or that you have to suffer for this. I guess that's the question. You don't have to suffer for this. And when we, oh, sorry, my time is up. I'll just say, the other thing is that I'll address tent questions. I've taken a tent out. I've been on street actions, and I've also taken them to. So yes, there's a bunch of things. I won't go into the details now, but certainly Edwin, Lou, and I have all done that. And we can give you some more information about that and how it works. It is a bit different, but the main issue, how do you deal with people who disagree with you? When you just say, hey, I'm here to listen to you, and they just do that, they're so shocked that they generally, you know, lower their defenses, and they're really appreciative. And then it becomes two people, not two, like a lefty and a righty or whatever it is. So anyway, that's about it. Sarah, I will pass to you.
I'm just absorbing what everyone's been saying. Also about differentiating between a restorative.
Okay, who are you talking to though?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's right.
Let me somebody. Josh.
Listening.
Thank you. So I'm still thinking about a facilitator differentiating between restorative circle and empathy circle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're still thinking about the differences between restorative circles and empathy circles.
I'm thinking, you know, what if someone comes in and they're with very polarizing energy?
Mm-hmm. What to do if people come in with a polarizing energy?
Yeah, I think a lot of the other questions have been addressed regarding, you know, being important to take nature breaks, the importance of a co-facilitator in case, you know, technology drops out. I know for myself, my laptop keeps on tanking. So I have to keep on turning off my video, and I worry about that.
Yeah, so you're wondering about that, you know, commitment and how being in this digital system, like what happens if your laptop goes out and how that impacts the circle.
And I mean, definitely trying to take care of myself. If I'm plugging in my laptop, and the problem is I'm on the computer, it looks like on and off for 12 hours. I end up, my hands start hurting at the end of the day. And so I'm learning it's not good to use your laptop while it's plugged in.
Yeah, so you're seeing like when you're on your computer for 12 hours and when it's plugged in that your hands start hurting towards the end of the day, and it's not great to use it when it is plugged in.
And I had called electrician about this, and they said it's the magnetic fields, and that it's just, so I you know, I move my computer away from my, you know, I worry about that because it would be good to just stay put. And I can't believe how much the battery gets depleted from just using Zoom.
Yeah, so when you talked with an electrician about using the computer when it's plugged in, they said that the magnetic field could be influencing your hands, and that it's probably not a good thing to use while it's plugged in. And at the same time, Zoom is using a lot of battery life, and you'd like to just kind of stay put.
So I was just a little bit concerned about that from my end. And I was also thinking about all the people that I know who are so contentious, and how is that handled if they come in and they're talking about, I mean, I can name a couple of super contentious issues that people are just going back and forth on social media about. I mean, really mean to each other. And like, what if that happens and people are, just saying, I have this huge, strong opinion that, and then they're using actually judging language in their share,
Yeah, so you can think about the conversations you've seen on social media, and you're wondering if these people with the contentious attitude come into the circle and use these judging words. I don't know if you said this, but like what influence that would have on the circle.
Right. I mean, I've had people even say, like, when I've even noticed, like, just messaging someone saying, hey, this paper's been retracted, that's not credible science. I've actually said that. And the person replied, I don't care. I'm going to post this anyway. I've made up my mind that I've decided that this is reality.
Yeah, so when you shared with somebody that the paper was retracted, they responded, I don't care, I'm sharing this anyway. And they've made up their mind that this is the reality.
Yeah. So I'm noticing that people seem to have made up their minds already regarding contentious issues. Whether or not there's scientific credibility, and they have these anyway. So I'm wondering how that would work in an empathy circle, because I actually would like to get people together who are, on diverse viewpoints and not just people apart.
Yeah, so it sounds like, with the people that have made up their mind, that you're wondering how this would work in an empathy circle, and if it would make an impact, given what you've seen from them in the past. Great. Do you feel heard? Great. Zach, would you like to listen? Cool. So I have a few things, concerns, I guess. One of them, the idea of the bio break. Outside of that, I have noticed, especially as somebody who works on my computer most of the time, I don't necessarily like sitting down for 2 hours straight. And I am wondering, I mean, I'm thinking of doing this already, but if anyone has had some sort of moving empathy circle where you can actually walk and talk, even having the listener and the talker next to each other and the other people on the sides kind of walking together, but how to meet that need of movement. My back's probably not going to like this too much. Not everyone, I know Natalia is struggling with back issues, so not everybody would necessarily enjoy the same kind of movement, but I'm currently thinking of ways to get movement into this empathy practice.
Right on. So you're naming basically the issue of like bio breaks and questioning if it's feasible to organize this process as a moving process, a physically moving process, so that people can save their backs and otherwise be more physically active while doing reflective listening.
Yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, so I'm thinking about those physical needs and even food needs that, which I know you can eat, and being cognizant of what time it is. Like for me, it's around lunch right now. And so I think that, really focusing in on the people's needs who are attending the circle to ask, will they be hungry? Will they have just been sitting down for 5 to 10 hours at work? What will they need in addition to empathy, and trying to craft that into the empathy circle?
Sure. So how you're questioning, how do we integrate, basically more needs, such as like the need to eat. If people might participate in the empathy circle process, they may have finished their, a long day at work, and then they're being asked to sit down for potentially a 2-hour duration. So like, is there the possibility of accommodating more of those needs in the course of the process?
Absolutely. And there's one thing that I keep like coming to the back of my mind. I do have a degree in social work, and we are technically mandated reporters. So if you do hear about like elder abuse or child abuse, suicide's a little more fuzzy. And I'm not even trained as a clinician, but I'm pretty sure if there's like a specific plan on how somebody wants to kill themselves, like you're supposed to report that, and along with teachers and anyone who deals with children. So I also see how that could really get in the way of empathy. And I'm wondering what my role is. I don't even feel comfortable necessarily. I've seen mental institutions. I don't want to send somebody there if they don't need to be there. Point is, I could see how that role can get in the way of empathy when we're trying to be non-hierarchical.
Mm-hmm. So you're naming, as a social worker yourself, you recognize the reality that people who participate in this process may be mandated reporters, and that mandated reporting, as well as other like professional requirements, perhaps like it, could impact the manner in which people can participate in this process. And I think you were naming also that in terms of like equity or hierarchy as well, possibly, but sorry, I didn't quite get that.
Yeah, that's it. Basically, people are some people, like a lot of different jobs in the US, are told, if you hear these certain things, like you should report this to the police or DFACS, Family and Children's Services or something like that. And that concerns me in the sense that I think it could really get in the way of being fully present and empathizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're naming that people, that their participation in this process could possibly be inhibited because if they were to fully share about details going on in their lives, that could, potentially trigger mandated reports or responses for law enforcement, that would dull participation.
Yep, that's for that concern. And then my last concern is for those offering empathy trainings, like how they will be able to get, I'm not saying that money is the most important thing, but to continue to pay their bills. Like if you would really like to dedicate your life to being an empathizer and holding these circles, how can we do this in an equitable way to help empathizers keep paying their rent?
Okay, so you're naming the financial implications of participating in this kind of work, whether as a facilitator or as a participant. And I think you were saying that overall, if anyone is participating in this work, that inequalities in your economic situation can lead to inequality in your ability to access the process.
Yep. Yeah, I feel heard. Thanks.
Awesome. Right on. All right. And forgive me, I haven't been keeping track very well of like this current cycle. Bill, should I go to you, or is there?
Well, I think Charlotte hasn't, and then maybe MJ hasn't gotten a turn, and then Natalia a second turn, and Sarah. So, any of them?
Yeah. MJ, be down for reflecting me.
All right. Cool. He's stoked. He's ready.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, Charlotte, Sarah, and Natalia and I roll in the circle yesterday or Tuesday. So, yeah. So, I think along those lines of what Joshua was naming, I definitely agree. With the concern that it's a really valuable concern of triggering mandated reports while doing this process, and how to potentially protect people, and notifying them appropriately, like possibly, and this could be like responsibility of a facilitator to check in with participants and see if there are any mandated reporters. I'll stop it there real quick.
Yeah, so you agree with Joshua that this is a big concern. Great importance of triggering mandate reports to keep people safe, if that's the job of the facilitator. How do we go about that in a safe way that still welcomes people?
Yeah, and I work in public schools, so I myself I'm a mandated reporter, another thing I wanted to respond to, Bill's story about the Rogerian therapist. That was a great illustration, I think, of the problem in which how reflective listening can get off track of making people feel fully heard. I feel lucky that in the situation that I was in, I didn't take it to the splat part. And I checked in with myself and them and went, oh, okay, this person doesn't need me reflecting them right now. They need to feel seen in a different way, so let's do that instead. Yeah. Otherwise, well, let me stop there and
Sure.
One more thing.
Yeah, I hear you work in a public school. You're a mandate reporter profession, and you really like Bill's story about reflective listening and how it might be misguided in some cases and is appropriate. And you have had an example where reflective listening might not have been the best thing for the other person, so you know that other approaches might be more appropriate at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and perhaps that can continue to be the kind of judgment call that a facilitator can make, to model how this kind of dialogue is used as a tool and not as a religion, and showing how, like, in different situations, if it's necessary for the facilitator, like, step in and respond, basically that that empowers everyone in the process to feel like it's still being fairly organized. Yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, you would like to learn how to use this tool most appropriately for everybody in the room so that it can be used equally.
And so I was only trying to say, it's okay. Yeah, and I was only trying to say that basically, like, the facilitator, can still be the one who, like, holds on to that judgment call of, like, whether to, like, break out of reflection for a moment to just, like, level with people. And that way they're also, like, that's also a teachable moment too, right? That helps get people on the path to, like, go from just reflecting to doing the more flexible reflection and active type of conversation, which is a great goal to bring people towards.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So I think it's important that the judgment call falls upon the facilitator only, and that can be quite a learning opportunity for them, because it's, instead of just reflecting on people, you actually have this interaction. We engage with them in a different way.
Yeah, right on. Thanks, MJ. Really appreciate it. I feel heard.
Thank you, Zach.
We're doing it.
Charlotte?
Hi, yes, I'm here. And are you getting feedback right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so. Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah. I'm still learning a lot from even talking about this process. It's teach me quite a lot, so I'm trying to take a minute to process it.
Yeah, there's going to be a minute here to take in what you're learning.
a concern I have, again, my aim is to facilitate these for conversations around the climate and ecological crisis. A concern I have would be people might be joining with various depths of understanding of it, which can be like some people can be holding a lot of grief, and then another person can be like brand new to the issue. So a concern I have would be kind of finding the balance between that.
Mm-hmm. So if people are in very different places, how would there be an overall balance?
Yeah. And I've actually been thinking about, like, it's an online space. I wonder if some of these conversations, I wonder if they should be like age restricted or something. Like, I know there's a lot of like children involved in the climate movement. How do we like, should they be restricted if they're like going to be very intense, or like, yeah, just questions over that.
Yeah, and you recognize in the specific area you're wanting to do these empathy circles in, the climate movement, you know that there's children involved and various ages probably of children. And so is there some kind of age limit for a particular empathy circle?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking with myself, I know I wouldn't be like totally comfortable talking about the more like doomy stuff with like children I know, for example.
Yeah, so now you're recognizing there's a way of interacting with children in age appropriate ways, and so you're recognizing adults have this, you would have a way to, oh, I don't want to share this kind of emotion with that age of a child.
Yeah, I mean more like, I don't mean like children as well, like I mean teenagers.
Oh, okay. True. Even teenagers, you might not want to show that kind of emotion to a teenager.
Perhaps, yeah.
Perhaps.
Concern. Yeah, I don't think I have any other concerns. Thank you for listening. I feel clear.
Yeah, so you're at the end of your time now, feeling okay. You feel heard.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Okay. Natalia, I know your screen is not there. Are you available now, or pick another time for you to be available?
No, I'm joyfully available. Thank you for asking.
Okay. Okay, so you're available, but your screen is off.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm setting it up.
Okay.
Hey.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and then your screen came back off. Oh, that's Zach. Let me get. Mm-hmm. I have a phone, so I can't find you. Okay, there you are. So I'm just gonna sit with that for a bit. Yeah, I'm curious too. I think I heard someone say this, but I wasn't sure if this is what they said, but I'm curious about if other people have brought empathy circles in with something else that So this format is free for all. Like it sounds like it's a community circle that's, yeah, I guess if, I'm just wondering about payments. So what if the place isn't Zoom and it's a place that needs rent for that time period? Do all people has there been everyone that has contributed to the rent? And then another type of payment, if this kind of empathy circle is mixed in with something else that requires another level of skill, if payment for this kind of circle mixed in with something else is in the empathy circle looked down upon, or if it's if there's some kind of precedent for different ways to add payment or not.
So I'm hearing you're curious about the payment question. If the empathy circle takes place in some place that wouldn't require rent, or it's taking place together with some other activity that requires different level of skill, and that would require payment, how it would be looked at the empathy circle community.
Got it. Yep. I just had a thought. This is just being in this particular circle with this particular question. A lot of times people in trainings might have this as a one question on a form, and I don't force myself to sit there to answer the question. And so I feel like this group is coming up with a lot more questions than a simple feedback form would offer. And I'm appreciating this way of teaching the process, coming up with our own questions that, like I said, a simple tell us your questions wouldn't bring forth.
So you're appreciating the process when together with teaching the process of empathy circle, we're also giving the theme, and the theme is bringing in so many more questions that simple one-line question in Google form would ask, would bring.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of incorporating the need for movement or need for bio breaks. I was just thinking about a co-facilitator and I talk about the need for bringing in yeah, these kind of movements that, like, if something gets highly stressful, that there's a way to reduce that kind of stress in different ways right in the moment, and to have bring in this culture of empathy, and with a culture of recognizing when stress can when cultural norms about just sit still and take in the stress is that's not the culture. Like if you feel stress, you can take a break for your body and reduce the stress in these kinds of ways. And so yeah, I'm appreciating the thought for needing to bring in culture of movement and culture of bio break and culture of nervous system stress, like first aid or something.
So you're appreciating the idea of having bio breaks and movement breaks, especially when there's something stressful happening in the circle. You believe that it is a cultural norm to sit still and take it in, and it can be changed by actually introducing some new norm of releasing it through the movement.
Yeah, thank you. And is that the time? Yes. Great.
Yeah, but you have the last thing you want to say? Go ahead.
No, I was feeling the time myself. Thank you so much. I feel heard. Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you for sharing, Charlotte. Sarah, would you be joyful to hear me?
Sure.
Thank you. Well, I'm really enjoying that the people are taking movement breaks and bio breaks, and that's a huge need of mine, and it's a huge challenge since the beginning of lockdown and moving into Zoom.
So you're really reflecting that you're enjoying and happy about the fact people are taking bio breaks and movement breaks.
Yeah, and I'm realizing that there is a big moaning from my side about the movement, as I think my back injury is connected to it, that for the past 5 months I'm not moving as much as I'm used to. We're still in lockdown.
So you're really reflecting on the importance of movement and the fact that during the last 5 months, during shelter in place, you haven't had the opportunity to move around as much.
Yeah. And I also feel like a word citizen right now, connecting to people from all over the place in many different Zoom calls, and this is my 3rd call of the day, even though I'm on a break. At the same time, I'm really wondering how it can be combined, the need for movement, the need for activity, physical activity, and still having these connections through Zoom calls.
So you've been on 3 Zoom calls with people today from different countries, and you're wondering how can movement be incorporated?
Yeah, and I would love to have some ease on this, and yeah, today I'm joining the calls without video, and I really see decline of quality of connection that I'm experiencing. Like even now I'm kind of pushing my body to sit in front of the screen because I really want to be seen and really want to look at the screen as well. And with my video off, there is a big part of nonverbal that is missing.
You're definitely, so you're seeing the correlation between having a screen and being able to interact and connect in a more meaningful way, and yet when the screen's off, there's a disconnect.
Yeah. And yeah, having said all of this, I'm still so grateful for the technology. For like, if the lockdown happened 6 years ago, I think it would be much more miserable than nowadays, with Zoom, with WhatsApp calls, with like so many ways to connect to loved ones and total strangers.
So you're just really connecting to the gratitude of being able and to connect to total strangers right now, and feeling this may not have been possible a few years ago if there was shelter in place. But now with Zoom, you can connect to the world.
Yeah. And seeing Josh eating ice cream, I can't stop myself from commenting on it. Enjoy it. Yeah, hope it's a mango one. Looks nice.
So you're feeling a sense of joyfulness. And I didn't catch everything you said.
I said bon appetit to Joshua. Yeah, and I guess I'm feeling a bit playful and cheered up because I'm also, yeah, and just feel the joy of connecting and feel the joy of being seen. That's really, I don't know, like these bubbles are running through my blood.
So you're feeling this sense of joy, you're feeling this sense of cheering up. Just, it's bubbling full.
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel heard.
Thank you. I'm going to pick Bill Filler.
Oh, that's me. Yes.
I'm going to have to move my computer. I'm going to tank out memory.
Sure.
Which keeps on happening. And I'm so sad about that, but sorry.
It's okay. Do what you need to do. We're all in this together.
Yeah, until I'm trying to figure something out and have to buy some stuff. Maybe. Sorry. I'm at my I gotta plug it in. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm definitely oh my goodness. I'm gonna hang up my phone call. Otherwise my internet disconnects. I'm also a mandated reporter with the school district, so I was appreciative of sharing about those concerns. I'm also really grateful to be able to talk to people from around the world. This is really cheering me up in a significant way. I was extremely active before, and I was doing a lot of events and traveling, and I'm not doing any of that. So I get a huge joy talking to people from around the world.
Okay, so you appreciate what Joshua said. You're also a mandated reporter, and what you're feeling is a lot of joy talking to people around the world and connecting with people from all over. Beforehand, you were traveling and I guess meeting a lot of people, and now you're restricted, so this is another outlet for that, so you appreciate it.
It's a big deal because I actually, I've been grieving because I made a judgment call not to visit my sister in Australia last summer. God, not realizing what was, and my nieces and nephews, not realizing what was going to transpire. And I was also going back and forth from the East Coast. So this is a really significant change. So every time I'm on a call with people from other countries, it's huge.
So you're reflecting on, you made a decision not to see your sister, I guess last summer, and to travel, and so So being able to connect with people in this way is very gratifying for you.
It is, and also the movement breaks. A professor of mine did that every time we had class. He would have a little dingo on, say, time for a movement break.
Mm-hmm.
It's a stretch break. So the entire class would take like 2 minutes out to do a stretch break. It was constant, like, okay, it was throughout the class several times. And I was like, wow, okay. But I definitely see, like, I'm on another Zoom call with a colleague, and she's on her trampoline. She's in the background. She's either on her trampoline, bouncing, you know, burning up calories, or she's on her yoga ball. It's very inspiring. You know, she's not bouncing when she's talking. She's just bouncing when she's listening.
So you have a friend and colleague who basically does do exercise while she's on the call, and you feel it's a good thing, and it doesn't really distract, because when she's listening to you, or no, when she's speaking, she's not bouncing, but when she's listening, she will be.
Yeah, but I can't imagine a facilitator doing that.
I can't imagine a facilitator. Okay, can't see that. All right.
I just can't imagine. And I just, you know, but I've actually thought of investing in a trampoline myself, because I was used to having a lot more activity, and I'm finding myself in front of the computer a lot more than I ever was.
So you're missing that activity, and you're in front of the computer. So you're thinking about, you know, doing something like that yourself.
I don't really have much else to add on this topic. I mean, I guess, and it's hard, and I'm also noticing, like, I think I need to probably drop into some honesty. So I had such a full day yesterday that it was hard for me to drop into being fully present, as present as I wish I was, because I have so much going on, and that still needs resolving. There's like, I'm working on projects, and there are a lot of loose ends.
So you're reflecting that yesterday was really busy. There are a lot of projects, a lot of loose ends. And so you regret, you don't feel you're as present as you possibly could be. Yeah, but you know, so there's a lot going on for you, and you know, you're trying to balance it all out. And then I'm not hearing you, Sarah. I don't know if you froze, or is that me? Everyone's frozen. Oh God. All right.
And so that's actually part of our environmental issue, and that this is like that when internet goes out like that, it's because they're not using fiber optic cable. We don't have it either. So sorry, I was just relating that sometimes our internet will go out too, because we're not using fiber optic cable.
Right, my internet went out. I don't know what happened, but I'm back. Great. All right, so we have just a little bit. I think I will do the same thing just to, so one of the things that a lot of the questions are great, and I invite you to solve them with us. We are a small new group, and we were actually confronting them. And so, but I do want to give you some sort of, you know, response. So about movement. One of the things we do is we use theater games sometimes. So Edwin will say, you know, give a movement for how you're feeling. I'm like, oh, I'm happy, or I'm sad, or whatever. So we incorporated that. I think, Joshua, your idea of just, you know, turn it off for a second, listen, get some stretches in, great. You know, I think that's fine. let's see, mandated reporters. I was special ed. I am or was a mandated reporter. So that's a concern. It has not come up in any of the circles. There have been some very contentious, and I believe I have some serious concerns about some of the people and some of the things that have been said, but nothing that rises to that level. Generally, what we did because I was working with suicidal adolescents and things, is that we just did an assessment as to how real the plan is. Do you have a plan? Do you do like that? And the more specific it is, the more likely that they've actually thought it through. So that's a quick and dirty sort of assessment. And to deal with that, I haven't had to deal with that. But if you really felt you were going into a situation, you might want to, start with a disclaimer, if something comes up here or something like that, just to, it also can act as sort of a damper if people are, so you kind of have to, money for facilitators, that's one of the things we all love to do. In one sense, money is frowned out at this level. In other words, if somebody said, oh, you had a great facilitation, now I'd like to interest you in a timeshare. Then that would not be something that we would be doing. Or now, how about some insurance or something like that? So that would be kind of crass commercial. But as we start to do trainings, as you start to specialize trainings, this is my own, conception, and nothing is set in stone. And let me say to everybody also, Edwin has a crowdfunding thing you can contribute to. But I would also like to see facilitators making money and earning a living doing this. And so I think that as we develop more specialized trainings, we can do that, like for a school or a corporate thing like that. You could go in. So this is free, people can learn it. And then when you want to deal it or, in a specific environment, then that also, requires some other skills to do that. And children in circles, I'm dealing with that. I'm a former teacher, so I'm trying to get circles into schools. There are certain things that are different, like the attention span, the fact that kids are not as focused and things like that. And so actually I am trying to create a curriculum that would address some of those things. I'd be happy to share it with you guys as we go on. Let's see, we have about 3 minutes. In person and renting space. Yeah, that was the money thing. Generally, we show up on the street, which is free. And I think it was like the farmer's market was $20 a year, wasn't that much. Oh, and an empathy circle, empathy tent, it's about $600. Carolina did one, and that's about what it comes in at. That's a 10 by 10 thing. And then you have to deal with the wind, and there's a lot of other things. So again, this is just scratching the surface, but just to give you some idea, we have about 2 minutes left. Any other questions or anybody have something burning they'd like to share? Sarah.
I just wanted to share that a friend of mine had the Connection Action Project, and that they did have an empathy tent on current events, and they did get grant money. They applied for grant money in order to do this. So I just wanted to put that out.
Okay. All right, back to main room in 2 minutes. All right. I'll broadcast that. All right. Okay, so your friend, anybody else? Did I not answer something correctly? Or was there something, somebody would like some more clarification about some of the things? I tried to go through it really quickly. And one thing I will say is that this is, we're trying to balance giving you enough content without making a major life commitment, which it is as you see and you get into it. But that's at your own time. So we're trying to kind of like try to give you the basics so that you can then independently go and learn on yourself. On the other hand, these are also great questions that we are actually dealing with. And we welcome you to join us in solving those problems and co-creating a culture of empathy. All right.
Cool.
All right, and so I guess I'll close all rooms and we will go back into the main room, hopefully. Now, I was out and I'm still host, so I hope that main room is still there. Again, be gentle. All right, see you in a bit. All right. Okay, so we're back a bit early. They should be coming in a minute. Uh-oh. What happened, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that when you left, one of the other users in the other group was made host, potentially.
Oh, okay.
But from my understanding of how Zoom works, Zoom won't allow two concurrent sessions to occur off of one host account. So, I mean.
Okay, well, I see breakout room and it says they will close in 6 seconds.
Oh,
so if
awesome.
they come back in 6 seconds, then we're good. If not, then, oh, here we go. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you, Jesus. All right, thank you. Okay, great. So welcome back, everybody. And so a lot of interesting things, more questions than answers. I actually, to be honest with you, I kind of broke with the procedure because there was just so many questions that I felt I needed to respond to. And I wanted to keep this circle going for the rest of you. As we come back, the question is, how is your experience and how might it have changed your thoughts or feelings about facilitating? And so that's the question of the day. I'll invite Lou to maybe talk about a little bit about his experience or anything else he'd like to say to frame the discussion.
Thanks, Bill. I will say one thing, because I was in the middle of making a point when we got thrown back into the main room. That the one closing thing I'll say about what I was talking about is there is no one right way to facilitate. So you make choices, you use your best judgment, you make choices, you see what happens, you learn from that, you keep going. So there isn't like a absolute right choice about when to intervene or when not.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I have more to say than that. We had some questions come up in our group too. So maybe in addition to, Bill, what you were saying about that this is, what was your experience of how it went and how has it impacted your thoughts about facilitation? We could also have time for questions, after that, if we have enough time, if people have questions that they want answered.
Okay, well, we do have some time. We have about 40 minutes still, if we want to take that. And so, because I have a bunch of questions here, so what we'll do is maybe split this up into 2 sections. We'll kind of like go around, do a kind of like, what was your experience and what came up for you? And then we'll go into another round where we can list some of those questions, and then I guess Lou and I can respond to it. How's that sound to everybody? Does that sound okay? All right. Looks good. All right, so I'll just go around my screen start. So Joshua, your experience of today's circle.
Yeah, I really had a great time asking questions and hearing the, basically it happened the same way where we seem to feed off of each other's kind of topics. And I like how we took bio breaks and the liberty to do a little stretch break. And we all seem to talk about the need for movement and human bodily needs is important.
Okay. All right. MJ.
Yeah. I feel more confident after that session. I thought it was a good one. Yeah, it was nice to talk. I initially didn't think I had many questions, but then once we started talking, they kind of just festered up. So it was nice to explore that.
Great, great. Charlotte?
Yeah, it seems like even more time would be like, I guess the next level would be brainstorming how to be even more free from some of the cultural norms that are put on us. Yeah, appeasement to cultural norms, like the example we have is staying still versus moving. But I still think, even though we had all this freedom, I still think the cultural norm of staying still is still oppressing us, even if we have more freedom than at other Zoom calls, maybe. So just continued creativity about I guess continued exploration on how to be honest, how to be fully present and fully a person in a not just in our minds but in our bodies too. And then one other thing was the difference between feeling like I really don't have any questions because it's just a blank that I would fill in, versus being in a community of questions. It's really different. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Zach?
Yeah, so one outcome I really appreciated, oh, sorry, Charlotte, if you can mute.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I had the opportunity to bring up a situation where I was facilitating Empathy Circle and felt the need to actually like stop the reflection and do like a direct like response, you know, to the person. And without going into the details of that, Bill told a really great joke, and I'm going to try to recite the joke. That one day there was a Rogerian therapist who was sitting with a client, and the client said, "I'm feeling depressed." So the therapist reflected back, "Okay, you feel depressed." And the client says, "Okay, I think I want to commit suicide." And the therapist says, "Okay, you want to commit suicide." And then the client gets up to the window and jumps out, and the therapist reflects back, "Splat." And I just appreciated that, you know, to just, you know, keep in mind, you know, our options, you know, as facilitators to, you know, seek practical alternatives to make people feel seen, you know, while they're doing this with us. And, you know, that we're not doing it in a rigid, you know, or religious way in any way. We're just trying to accomplish the goal of everyone feeling heard. So, yeah, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam. Sarah.
I was really thankful that people brought up the need for movement and stretch breaks and bio break and how to incorporate that into the circle. That's a huge deal in terms of balancing body, mind, and soul. And I really appreciated the share about how do you deal with being a mandated reporter in a circle if something comes up, and how to assess and how to create the safety if there's a legal thing being a mandated reporter. And I like, you know, the fact that I appreciated everybody's share. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Jenny?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I think I might have let go of some of my wanting to get it right. The kind of there's a very particular way of doing it. I mean, when you learn something, you really look for a particular way of doing it to kind of to build your own way on. And I'd forgotten that, and it's really good to realize that again. And the beauty of it is just really touching me. I find it so beautiful, challenging and demanding and a little bit scary and so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Karen.
That was really interesting to see how Lou managed to host the circle, because he did it very well. That was really interesting. And I still have some doubts inside me, but it was interesting to see that we have all the same questions inside our body or in our mind before the circle. But we know that we're going to succeed to realize something great with the connection of each other's. And that was interesting to see that I wasn't the only one to feel to be an imposter in this role of facilitator. That's it.
Thank you, Karen. Anish?
Yeah, I think in this space, this was my biggest circle so far, 6 of us. So keeping in mind the previous circles that I've had, it had a very different feeling to it. And I could hear much more diversity of thoughts and exchanges. And for me, I felt the time was less, but that's me. I wish there were a couple of more rounds to go around. And I also understand that it was almost quite a lot of time that we spent. And when I think deeper, I realized that because the circle was big, there was less time to go around multiple rounds. So as personal takeaway for me is how numbers also kind of add a new dimension to the quality of the conversations and how much time it takes to go in depth, and diversity. So it's not about which is good or bad. It's just about it's different.
Thank you, Anish. Katrina.
Hi. I'm sorry, my PC crashed, so I've only just come back into the room. So sorry to have missed what everyone said.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to watch the recording.
Oh, do you want me to restate the topic, or do you know?
Oh no, I heard the topic, but hadn't actually started going around, and when I just kind of everything just shut down. I realized after the session that we all struggle with different things in the process. That's okay. That's okay, because we're all kind of in a way feeling in the dark. So even though everyone seems to be at different levels, some have lots of experience, some have none. That's okay. It's all part of a process that we're going through, and that the more we do it, the more I understand it. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Katrina.
Like I'm being very coherent.
Okay. Thank you. Anne?
I appreciated being in a circle with Lou and him sharing some bits of information and suggestions during it, and the diversity of our little group. There was a lot of treasures to take away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Charlotte, I believe you did check out, right? My screen is moving around. So you had a chance to?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then Nish, and then we have Sarah, who says stretch break. So I'll go to Natalia, then Sarah. Natalia?
Yes, thank you. I enjoyed the space today. I'm really celebrating the group wisdom, how many interesting questions were raised, and I'm really grateful to be able to answer in most of them. and yeah, have a little bit more reassurance and trust. Thank you.
Great. Well, one step at a time. Sarah.
I believe I shared already.
Oh, you did. Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Thank you. Now I remember it. Not quite in time. All right. So I was struck by how many questions there were, and I just felt that it was important me to kind of just respond, at least as a beginning. And I know Lou got a few. I'll kind of just talk about some of the questions that came up, and then Lou, I'll turn it over to you, and then we can kind of go into a kind of roundtable discussion. So one of the questions was, well, what about movement in the Zoom calls? What about getting up and stretching and things like that, bio breaks and things? What do you do in contentious circles where you know there's going to be a big conflict? And then, as Zach said, when do you break with the process, or how do you do that? If the one person said, which I was, a mandated reporter, if you're a mandated reporter, what do you do if something comes up that you have to report? The other question was, at what point do we all get paid for doing this? That would be nice. Yeah, and that's something that was under development. And then what about children? How do you adapt them for children? Edwin has used this with children in his family very successfully, but also there are some other things, their attention span, their focus, things like that you try to account for. And I'm trying to develop a curriculum to address that. And then we talked about, feedback, and then also when the facilitator is not feeling up to the job, how do they reach out for support and how do they get supported? And those are just a few. Lou, I'll pass it over to you.
Those are all great questions. Yeah, and we didn't have additional questions that came up in my circle. We did have a question about conflict. How do you deal with conflict in the circle, and how do you deal with strong emotions when they come up, either in others or in oneself? And yeah, so I can share some information or experience that I have with those things. And so I don't know, Bill, if you wanted to take turns answering some of those, or if you or if you were just putting them out there as questions that got raised.
Well, I was putting them out there as these are just things, and also good feedback for us. But why don't you go ahead, Lou, and respond to that, and then we have some things, and maybe we can then someone can, after you go, someone can say, oh, I'm concerned about this, and then we can give a response a little bit more fulsome. So go ahead.
Yeah. So the question around conflict in circles. So I would say, that if two people have a conflict with each other, a specific conflict, and they're wanting to work that out, that a circle be held for the purpose of doing that. In other words, that you have a circle for that purpose, and other people who are involved in the conflict could come be part of it. And that there are you can use a regular empathy circle process for that, and that there are some topics or guiding questions that I would use in a circle like that, and that I've used for conflict resolution, and they kind of follow a restorative circle process. So Dominic Barter, I've been trained in Dominic Barter's restorative circle process, and the questions that are part of that circle process, you can use them in a regular empathy circle, and that can work. But I think if I was facilitating a circle, let's say there are 4 or 5 people in the circle, and it emerges during the circle that 2 of them have a significant conflict with each other, and they're trying to work that conflict out in the circle, I would, depending on how much it's impacting the circle, if it was impacting the circle a lot and it was kind of like taking over the content of the circle, and others who were there for the circle were not enjoying that, like that's not what they came for, I would ask the two people that have a conflict not to use this circle to resolve it, because that's not what everyone came for. And I would ask them to have a separate circle, you know, to resolve their conflict. Yeah, that's kind of the guideline that I would use. I've been in lots of circles where people in the two people in the circle have differing ideas, and that when it's someone's turn to speak, they might say, well, you know, what this person said, I really disagree with it, and I think they're wrong or even full of shit, you know. And we do have a rule in the circle that when it's your turn, you know, you can say whatever you want. And that's been an interesting, that principle that when it's your turn to speak, you can say whatever you want. That is a principle that we've been discussing some. Is that really true? Is it really true that you could say whatever you want? I think the fact that people's time for speaking is limited, and the fact that the person reflecting back is not agreeing or disagreeing or arguing, they're just reflecting it back. And the fact that the vector of conversation normally goes around the circle, and there was not back and forth between two people, but that once someone has spoken, the listener, or I'm sorry, once they're done, I'm sorry, when someone starts speaking, they pick a different person. And as the facilitator, so as a facilitator, if the conversation is going back and forth between two people and they were picking each other a lot, at some point I would insist that someone else get picked. That those attributes of the circle help prevent conflicts from blowing up in the circle. The fact that people don't speak back and forth to each other, and that it's slowed down by reflection, and that the amount of time that someone is speaking is limited. All of those help to kind of contain the conflict that does arise in the circle. And so it really comes down to the facilitator being able to manage their own feelings about what's happening and stay present. And so the ways that I do that, manage my feelings, breathing, having a co-facilitator if the topic is a really sensitive one and I'm worried that it's going to get very hot, you know, having someone else in the circle with me so that I'm not by myself. And then just sticking to the process. Those are the tools that I use. But people have lots of different tools for managing their internal emotions. So, Bill, do you have anything you want to add to what I've said?
The only the only thing that I guess overview, and I've said this before, but there's always a performance anxiety with this. Am I memorizing enough? Am I doing this? What happens if there's a problem in the circle? And the idea is that it's not a contest. And so one of the things with a person who's taken this training, you know, I was in a circle with him and I was the co-facilitator, and they asked, well, how did I do? And I wasn't even thinking about that. I was trying to be a good co-facilitator. If you need to pass off, if you see me and you need to pass off something to me, it doesn't mean like, oh, so-and-so doesn't know how to do that. It means that you're taking, you know, you're aware of the dynamic of the whole group and what we're trying to do, which is to allow people to feel heard. And you're just trying to do the best that you can. And there are various different resources. So I encourage you to call on me, Lou, Edwin, Anish, each other, and because we're all have to build this together. And that's it, not a contest. There's a goal. And then,
so are there, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Lou. You were about to say what I think I was about to say.
So are there questions about what either of us said? And I realize conflict in circles and dealing with emotions is a very big topic. So, you know, I said a lot, so you might have questions about what I said.
Yeah, I do. If someone's naming someone in the circle, or I've had that happen in another place where someone else said everything but their name, so that the other person knew that they were talking about them, but in a negative way, but not naming them, and appraising the leader, but not saying negative things about one of the participants. And so that blew up, and we spent so much time on that because of how unjust that all felt. But the other person was speaking their truth, and they felt really honest and speaking their truth value system. So yeah, there you go. Someone laughed there.
Yeah, so you saying that makes me realize one of the other things I do as a facilitator, if a speaker says something really challenging, that's a place where I might jump in as the facilitator to reflect back what I'm hearing them say,
right,
rather than letting someone else do it.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that happens when a speaker says something, let's say about someone else in the circle, or something that's got a lot of judgment laced in with it.
Yeah.
So it's possible to reflect back what's important to them without reflecting back the judgments.
Yes.
Or naming the people.
Yes.
And that helps separate the person's problem and what's important to them from the specific, like them naming people. And that helps reduce the tension just a little bit. And it takes a lot of skill to do that. And yeah, so that's somewhere where I bring my skill in if I don't think that there's enough skill in the reflector to do that.
Thank you so much.
Anish, you had a question or a comment? You're muted.
So I also saw Anne raising her hand, so I'm happy to go after her.
Okay, Anne?
You go, Anish.
Okay, so and maybe it doesn't need to be answered. I just want to kind of acknowledge it, that I have witnessed a couple of conversations in circles like this where two-party, they were able to word and repeat each other with finesse, like their paraphrasing and summarizing was spot on. And yet they both said, but I know that you're saying back the words to me, but I know that you don't get me because I don't feel it. So that went on for a few times, and then it came back to the same point. And my assessment was that probably the two things, they needed more empathy, and maybe second was that the skills were also a matter of question. So does it make sense what I'm saying, or is it just an assumption that I'm making in my head? I just need to hear your view on this.
Yeah, I am hearing you, and I think what I would do as a facilitator there, so if someone reflected back what the person was saying, and they were saying they don't feel heard, and my judgment as a facilitator was that the reflection was accurate, then I might intervene and say, so what part don't you think they got? Or actually, I'm hearing you say, what you reflected back was accurate, but I still don't feel understood by you, right? That's what the speaker is saying. Yeah. So then as a facilitator, I might say, okay, well, so would you like someone else to reflect you back then? Because I'm hearing that you're not trusting it from this person. Would you like someone else to reflect you back? And maybe have them switch to another person, you know, if they don't feel trusted by that person.
Yeah.
Okay. This reminds me of I have a list of challenges that go on in empathy circles, and we're going to be working with them next week. And one of the challenges I added recently was a speaker that never seems to feel heard, regardless of how much they're reflected. Mm-hmm. And the way that manifests is they never say they feel heard, and they never acknowledge feeling heard in any way. they just continue to say more stuff or say no or whatever, you know. And I think it's a really interesting phenomenon that there are occasionally, it's not very often, but occasionally I will see someone like that. Like they just, no matter how, even though I think it sounds like they're being accurately reflected, you know, they never seem to feel heard. They don't seem to be able to take it in, what is being said to them. Yeah. So, did someone else have a?
Anne.
Oh yeah, Anne. Thank you.
Well, on what you were saying, Lou, do you think sometimes that's basically it's a reflection of the person not managing to articulate what they want, what they're trying to say?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a mystery. It might be that there's a part of the person that doesn't want to feel heard, that maybe that's somehow too vulnerable or to let it in, you know, and to actually let themselves be heard. Maybe they don't, you know, it might be a form of defense to just be angry and upset and not be willing to take in. Maybe the person can't really trust the person or trust anyone. I don't know. And analyzing it isn't important. I mean, it's the mystery. I more say, I mean, I do think about it. I would never kind of offer that analysis to the person because it's not helpful. It does help me as a reflector to try to think about it a little, because there might be something else that needs to be reflected, like you saying, that's not being reflected. No, it's not just what they're saying. But I really don't know the answer to it. And most of the time I say to myself, well, okay, so there's a mystery here. I don't understand why they're not hearing it. And I'm just going to keep reflecting as best I can and maybe ask them. So I'm not understanding what it is that you are wanting to be heard for. Can you say what it is? You know, something like that. Joshua.
In the empathy circle I noticed that it was the person reflecting that maybe didn't, you know, it's not saying that you agree with what you're saying, but even just saying it, like the person said, universally, it's impossible to empathize with somebody out of your group, in the out group. And then the reflector said, so what you're saying is that you haven't met like the right people yet. And so the person said, no, like, you know, what I'm saying is, no, it's not possible. And I think the reflector just also that he didn't speak the same language. But yeah, if the person reflecting doesn't want to repeat back exactly what they heard because they don't agree with it, I've seen that happen.
Yeah, and that's also a good example of a speaker actually needing the words that they said reflected back to them. So a lot of times the reflectors, sometimes they're uncomfortable doing that because they feel like a parrot if they're doing it, and they don't want to be a parrot. And other times they think it is a thing like, I think I understand more about you than you understand about yourself, and I'm gonna help you understand yourself better, which is not a reflection. You know, that's not an empathic reflection. Yeah, so sometimes it is very important to use the exact words that the person says, and particularly if the speaker says back to you when you reflect and the speaker says, no, that's not what I'm saying, I'm saying this, giving them back the words they said is the thing really that they're asking for.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I would just say, you could say, you know, reflect it, you believe, you know, frame it with, you believe that, you know, it's not, you cannot do this out without the out group. That's reflecting them, but also showing that it's not a universally held belief.
Oh, I'd like to add, like I've noticed that I really appreciate people reflecting back that they've been heard when they say yes. That's an acknowledgement throughout the share. you know, so I'm wondering if we could do, there's some things the facilitator can share about the best ways to let the other person know you're acknowledging their reflection.
So one thing I'll do is if I notice that the speaker is not ever saying that they feel heard or acknowledging it in any way, like by saying yes, I'll ask them, so do you feel heard? Did you feel heard by what was said? And if they say, yeah, I said, okay, well, it's good to let the person know that you felt heard.
Yeah, I find that that's really individual. And if it seems to kind of interrupt the flow, then I might do an intervention. And if not, and it's just the person is just not focusing on that, and the reflector seems okay, I might let it go. So it's like, to me, it's a judgment call.
I agree with Bill on that too. Zach?
Yeah, and I just wanted to I guess invite clarification on how the manner in which a listener could insert things into their reflection that was not conveyed by the speaker is different from an empathetic guess. And so there's a bit of a spectrum going on there. It's you have the repeating, and then you have small guesses, and then you can start getting into the spectrum where you're actually inserting things that are acting to persuade or outright not actually hit that meaning. And that's something I'm often finding myself, as I'm reflecting back speakers, I'm going, oh wait, that might have been more of a suggestion than a guess there. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think that's, again, as a facilitator, I think there's a balance, because sometimes you can see and you go in and, very deep, but someone said to me once, yeah, that's right, but I didn't really say that. So what that was telling me is that I was kind of trespassing a bit. And so I needed to step back. Hello?
Yeah, I would agree with that too, that one of the errors that reflectors can make is to say a lot more than the speaker said. And so actually, even if it's accurate, you can go too far. Part of a good reflection is that it's very close to what the speaker said. And if you go too far, either in emotion or meaning, you're reflect back a lot more meaning than they actually said, or a lot more emotion than they actually said, right, you can risk the speaker not actually feeling heard, feeling more like you're trying to teach them something, or you're or that you're actually expressing something. You've connected with the listener's connected with something, and they're expressing something they care about a lot because of the way that they've connected with it.
And just, sorry, one thing that I do is, and generally, and this is, I don't want to suggest this to you now, and so you're kind of new, but when I facilitate, I try to kind of have a rough rule of thumb that I'm only reflecting half amount of the time, because you can take somebody's speaking time all up reflecting what they said. And so now sometimes it's good to go in. It's a judgment call, because this is really important for this person to be heard on this. And so you go in. So it is a judgment call. But generally, if I'm speaking more than the speaker, then I feel that I have to make some sort of course correction there. Lou?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I suppose that's guidance. If I thought that was if I saw that happening in a circle a lot, that the people who were reflecting were speaking longer than the speaker, then if I saw that happen 3-4 times, then that's guidance I might give to the group, just saying, people are doing a great job reflecting, but you're also using a lot of words, and you know, try to keep your reflection to less time than the speaker speaks. Otherwise, they're not getting a lot of chance to speak. The other thing I will do is I will cheat on the timer. So if someone's taking a turn and the reflector is taking a lot of time to reflect them back, sometimes that happens. Or actually, even if I have a speaker who's having a lot of difficulty expressing themselves, and it's taking them a little more time than most people to talk, I wouldn't say anything about it, but I might cheat on the timer a little bit, pause it, give them a little bit more time. I wouldn't do that consistently, and I wouldn't do it in a way that's obvious to the other people because you want to keep it mutual. But those are slight adjustments that I would make to try to keep functional mutuality as opposed to scientific mutuality.
Great. And I want to see where I want to respect our time. Anish had something to say, and I think then maybe Lou will try to take 5 minutes to set you up for the next class, if that sounds good.
Yeah.
So Anish?
I just wanted to connect with Bill and Lou. What you said is it absolutely, for me, it depends on in the moment who is there, because sometimes it's not just about an empathic guess, it's also about language and culture, and there's so much more that comes in that as a listener, sometimes I have to really put myself in the spot to say how much is enough and how much is more, or how much is less. So I think those things also matter sometimes. So I don't know if there's a one straight answer to this question. It's a lot about presence and taking or feeling the judgment at that moment. Yeah.
So I apologize. Thank you, Anish. I apologize for going over time. So next time we meet, we'll be practicing introductions, and you'll be taking turns facilitating. So whatever circle you're in, we'll be breaking up the time, and you'll have a chance to facilitate for whatever 20 minutes at a time, and we'll go around. And we also you'll have a choice when it's your turn to facilitate. If you would like a little bit of challenge, you know, Bill and I will do some things in the circle to provide a little bit of challenge if you want that, so that you have practice with some of the things that happen in circles sometimes. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Great to see you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody. See you Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.